Hi everyone, this is Ramdas again with another video. Today's video is called The Miracle of Marriage in My Life. How what a blessing my wife was coming into my life, how it even all happened. And there's a spoiler alert, there's a pretty big secret to our process of coming together that I think would be fun to share today. So you'll uh, be a part of that. Um, I hope it doesn't upset anyone, but I think it'll be fun to share. My wife and I both agreed to this, by the way. So, um, uh, marriage has been actually quite miraculous in my life, forced me to take a lot more responsibility than I ever would have done on my own. Um, Forced me to, really dig deeper and be a much better person, to raise my quality of character much more than I would have done on my own. It's really been a purifying process. It's not like all the glamour and glitz that you see in the movies. It's definitely not like that, but it's been a really life-changing and wonderful experience, and I would say one of the biggest blessings in my life, um, really ever. So, how did we meet? Um, I was, well, to put it into perspective, I was very much desirous of meeting the right person at this point in my life. I had just kind of gotten out of a previous relationship in which I compromised or sacrificed some of my own character to try and fit into the maybe the mold that she would like, but I wasn't able to authentically be myself because when I was and I tried to share that authenticity with her, it wasn't exactly, received, and it just actually we weren't really meant to be together. We it wasn't blessed how we met. It wasn't blessed in all the circumstances leading into our relationship. And I was actually, and I knew that and I felt it. And there were many signs to me that this is not the one for you. But, certain things we get with certain people for certain reasons that might not be the really wholesome um, uh, reasons, like having a God conscious or a spiritual relationship, and it might be something else might be driving that. And actually a lot of people get in relationships like this, and it's actually most of the relationships. um and it's not a surprise to me, at least, why the most of the relationships, many of them, even maybe even most of them now, do end in divorce or separation or cheating, or at least going away from each other for some while or something like this. So it's very prominent. We're seeing in society the relationships are working a bit less than maybe in our grandparents' generations and earlier. But anyway, that's not so much what the video is about. So I got out of this relationship. I tried to, any last straggling of, maybe my childhood crush, or maybe this will work, or, I was always trying. And I had to actually just give up, which is like really funny, because paradoxical, because, you're trying to do something for so many years. I really thought I wanted a relationship. That's what I want. That's what I want. And then you get in a relationship, and it's not fully functional. It's not fully spiritual. It's not fully wholesome. And it didn't. It ended up not being what I wanted. So I kind of had to get out of um, my one relationship, and then ultimately realized that anything else I've tried in my life wasn't going to work at this point. And then I had to like kind of give up. And I remember just sitting on the floor one day, like almost in, not like in tears, but like really like lamenting that, like, like, what do you want from me, God? Why do you like let me struggle and suffer like this? All I want is a relationship. I want to, I promise, and the next girl I meet, I'll teach her all about you. I'll teach her all the things I've learned about you, all the teachings that I know now, everything. And I was like, do you want me to be a monk? Do you want me to be celibate? Do you want me to be just alone for the rest of my life? Like, I can do that. Is that what you want? So I actually was really contemplating that, and I had to actually surrender this idea of ever getting married altogether. I remember sitting there and I had like this existential crisis, and I said, you know what? Um, Fine, I give up. I don't need to get married. I don't need it. Maybe it's not good for me anyway. But fine, no problem. I'll just continue doing what I'm doing. I was working at a devotee, like a spiritual restaurant. People of the same spiritual tradition that I follow, which is Krishna consciousness. It was a Krishna conscious restaurant. And I remember just giving up, and it said, just I'm gonna just do my duty. I'm gonna do what I need to do, and that's it. And a uh, I don't need a wife. I don't need a relationship. I give up. So lo and behold, I gave up. And it's interesting. This was, I think, at the end of May of 2019. It's 2023 now, so it's about 3.5 years ago. And similarly, actually, at the same time, believe it or not, my wife had a similar story where she had like a final closure in one of her old relationships, prominent relationships of her life, where he was with someone else, and they've been separated for a while, but she finally realized that it would never work between them. And actually, she had this realization on the same time I had this realization, which we ended up finding out later. But anyway, how I met her is I continued doing my duty, and actually only 2 weeks after I had this like meltdown on my floor, when I realized that anything I had tried wasn't going to work, and I had no plan. I like to be the controller of everything. I like to know, yeah, I got this in this is plan B or plan C or plan D, but I was out of plans, and I just had to surrender that which is the essence of my whole spiritual tradition, is, to surrender unto God, and trust, just do your duty for him, and in trying to, glorify him and share his wonderful teachings and qualities and personality with others. And this is all you really have to do, and everything else will be taken care of. Christians have a similar teaching: seek ye first the kingdom of God, all other things shall be added unto you. So anyway, I know this theoretically, but I still try and plan everything, and I try to be the controller. But I finally had to give up. And so I was teaching yoga at the time. I was working at a restaurant, a devotee restaurant, but I was also there. My main reason I was there was to actually build and run a yoga studio. So I had a few yoga students coming. It wasn't very glamorous. I like maybe one or two would come for class, and it was, really hard times actually in these first building the studio. And so I'd only get a few people to come. And I remember one day a girl came in, and she would actually be my wife. But I remembered her from another time. I'd actually met her before. And so I'll maybe flash back to the time I met her before. I remember I was just working at a festival. There's like something in the town I was working called Newburgh Illuminated. It was like the big festival of the town. Newburgh was one of the first cities to get electricity when it came out. So, it's like a big whole thing, maybe even the first city. I don't know, but I think it was the premise of the festival. So it's like a big thing for the town, and quite a lot of people go. So our restaurant that we were working for, they now shout them out, like Krishna Kitchen they're out of New Paltz, New York, and Newburgh, New York. So they were, they had a tent, And so I was working at the tent, cool. And I remember this cute girl came up to the tent and she wanted a Bhagavad Gita, which is like my favorite teaching and like one of my deepest inspirations in my life, and it's like the ABCs of spiritual life in our tradition. And so I was like, I was serving food to someone else, but I was like, well, I can't miss this opportunity. So I remember just like seeing how like my boss just distributed this book to her and she just wanted it, and I just was like, she's cute, she's getting this book, I gotta like say something, but I didn't know what to say. So I just like turned, I was serving someone else food, and I think I had a hairnet on, um and I was like, that book will change your life. And she just like kind of like smiled at me, she's like, will it? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, all right. And then I was like, turn away, look cool, So I like turned away, went back to doing what I was doing, just like wanted to like tell her that'll change her life. And then, that was it. I thought, man, I'll probably never see her again. And so that happened maybe like just a few weeks after the I had this meltdown on the floor. And then shortly after that, my wife came into the yoga class. And lo and behold, it was just a day where it was just me and her in this yoga class. So there's actually one more backstory before I get into the details of us meeting. I actually had met my wife's aunt before I had ever met her. And she came into the restaurant. I guess, it was like a new thing in town and it was kind of getting some momentum. It was like on and off for a few years, but so she came into the restaurant for some reason and I was her waiter. So I remember, just waiting on them, just doing what I always do. And she was so friendly and she was so nice to me. And I remember her telling me, she's like, you have to meet my niece. She's a yoga instructor too. She'd really like what you guys are doing here. And I'm just like, or that wasn't yoga. She likes yoga. She does yoga. And I was just thinking in my mind, like, yeah, yeah, lady, like so many people like yoga. Like, I don't know, if, you know, I'd meet your niece, but like I was just thinking to myself, yeah, yeah, if your niece ever came in here, fine, I'd say hello. But other than that, I was just not really taking it very much seriously. But she was like so enthusiastic, I remember. I was like, okay. And yeah, lo and behold, actually, that niece of hers was going to be my wife, which was that's kind of like a surprise to me. But yeah, it was kind of cool. It was almost like God was actually forcing this thing to happen. Where other things that had happened in my life felt like God was putting a brick wall in front of it um, every step of the way, like he didn't want it to happen. This was different because so many things had to happen to bring us together. And I guess my aunt, or my aunt, now my aunt, kind of in essence, but my wife's aunt actually was like bugging her, you got to check out this place, you got to check out this place. So she kept hearing it from all kinds of different people. And so on our website we kind of had like a little bit of a I would say it was my fault. I put like a photo of an event they had in the past where they had like 30 people in the studio. So in my wife's view, she's like, wow, it's going to be like some big yoga class. Like I never checked this place out. And then lo and behold, she gets there and it's just me. And so I can't kind of meet up to the hype that she was thinking about. But it was kind of clear to me, like she's cute. I thought maybe I'm cute enough to have a shot. So I, just thought like, all right, I'll just teach her yoga because that's my job. And we go through a yoga class and it was kind of hard. And then I saw like my wife was really determined to like do the yoga class and like do all the poses. Almost like seemed like she was like competitive. And I was like, okay, um, you know, she's like really into yoga. Cool. So like we're doing like it was like a way harder class. But I remember saying like actually way harder than I wanted to do because actually, I told you in another video that so many things weird happened on this fasting day. I was doing one of my spiritual fasting days that I do every 2 weeks. I had another video where I'd also gotten arrested on that day, which ended up being a huge blessing. And now it also happens to be the day I, get to actually like like meet my wife in essence. And so I was fasting and I told her, like, if I'm seeming a little out of it, I'm sorry. I actually haven't eaten or drinking anything today, and we're doing all these poses. And she told me, like, oh, you fast. I've She had a thyroid problem, and she said that I actually was told by my Ayurvedic doctor, which is like an ancient Indian medical science connected with yoga, by the way. Only really yogis would know Ayurveda, I guess. But so she was told by Ayurvedic doctor she needed to do fasting to help heal her thyroid. And she's like, but I can't do it on my own. I don't know. For whatever reason, not a lot of people can fast just to like not eat for one day. So I was like, well, I do it every 2 weeks. I'd happily do it with you. So those were actually all our first dates. We would do all these spiritual fasting days together. And then we would like, I would kind of look forward to them. And then it got to a point where we started hanging out in between all the fasting days. I think we actually started hanging out pretty quickly after the first yoga class, but she would come to our like Friday night events. We would do kirtan, like, which is like a musical meditation. And she liked it. Yogi people usually like it, but anyone who gave it a shot would enjoy it. So, and we're just meeting like this, and then we would do a spiritual fasting day, and it would like be like we would stay up all night together, and but like just so you know, like the spiritual fasting days, like everything's pure and clean. There's no you're not even eating on the Seder. So what's to speak of kissing and doing all these things? So, it was actually like really clean, which is for the first time in my life, that's not how I would usually begin a relationship in my past experiences. So it was like a really like a wholesome thing. We would study the Bhagavad Gita together. We would talk about things. And I remember one time, I was teaching her something on the instrument I play, and she was trying to do it. And then I remember I just like kind of like guided her hand, and it was like kind of like almost like a romantic. And I think that's when like we both knew like, oh, I think this is going to be more than just us. I'm teaching you some stuff, and we're fasting together. We both kind of like felt it. And so yeah, we started hanging out, and it got deeper and deeper. And yeah, so we kind of became official pretty quickly. We met in like June, and I think at the beginning of August, we were like, let's date. Actually, I was trying to date even earlier, but she had some resistance, and it had to do with me having some contact with my ex-girlfriend still, in a friendly manner. But I didn't realize I had to kind of choose, and so I did. I chose, my this wonderful new prospect in my life. And so we were officially dating, and this is almost like a miracle how the next part happened. Is I was living in the city of Newburgh, and I think I'd met my wife's family once or twice, and they seemed really nice, and they were nice to me, and it was fine. But I wasn't like really like in the clique, you could say. Actually, maybe now I'm not even really in the clique, but I like, it's not like we were overly like friendly. They really trusted me. They really knew me, much, but they knew that my wife would keep coming over to our like little house in the city of Newburgh, and it's not a safe area. Like, you turn the corner, and like if you're walking outside at night, it's really dangerous there. I mean, I heard murders there and like things like that. It was, so I mean, talk about a blessing. But on their farm, someone who had been living there, they had an apartment. They own a horse farm. That's their family business. Shout it out, Gardner Town Farms. It's like polo and jumping and horse boarding and all kinds of really nice things to do with horses in Newburgh, New York. So like her family owns like the one farm in Newburgh, which is it's kind of cool because I like had a really deep interest in farming. I worked on farms the past few years. I was really into like food production, growing my own food, all kinds of stuff. So it was kind of attractive. Like, oh wow, like I found a farm girl somehow in this weird city. And so we were just hanging out, and like we were like, love smitten with each other. The beginning of a relationship, the honeymoon phase, you could call it. And So I guess her mom was quite worried, probably her dad too, but I guess they were worried that she kept coming to the city of Newburgh. And I'm sure she, came back, told stories that, like even more like aggravated their worries. And so this apartment opened up. Well, and my wife, who went by Allie at that time, and now we go by, she also got initiated into our spiritual traditions. And she goes by Sita among a lot of her new acquaintances and things. But she was, Allie at the time. And so she told her mom, like, well, if you don't want us to go into the city of Newburgh, Ram doesn't really like his place so much in the city. He's not like he wants to be there either. Why can't we move into this apartment that opened up on the farm? And so I'm sure her parents didn't exactly love that idea. I could almost be positive there's no way in heck her dad would love that idea. Um, but I just think they balanced her safety and what was going on, and then I think that they said, yeah, we'd rather that. Um, and fill their apartment, we'd pay rent, it'd be an honest thing. And so we moved in together, like only like a month after like dating, which was like, I don't know, to me that was like really weird. And when you move in with someone, it's like a really kind of like a big deal. And so this is where the story is gonna get to a level where maybe some of you, if you're watching, you might actually be shocked at how the next part of the story goes. Um, but I actually had just with some things that happened, I had lost my job. And I won't go into explicit detail. It's not so much relevant, but I had lost my position where I was working, and I had to decide, like, okay, well, I go back to my parents. I don't have an income. Like, what do I do? I had a savings, and I was collecting. I was able to get on some unemployment. So I was like, all right, we can make it. We can make this work. And I, just get into this relationship like 2 months in, and now, like, I lost my job. I'm like, what are we gonna do? You know. So we tried to like figure out what we would do, and lo and behold, I had a savings. I was like, and I had my spiritual teacher. He had recommended that I go to India. He's been wanting me to go for a while, and to really like recharge myself spiritually, so I can you know really understand. And he had a project there in India he really wanted to share with me. And so also he's like, and you've met this new ally, you should bring her as well. So I was, just kind of mentioning it to her, I think my guru wants us to go to India. We should go to India. And she was like, I want to go to India. She like went traveling in her younger years all over Europe and Haiti and Costa Rica and different places. She said, I want to go to India. And I was like, all right, well, maybe we'll plan this out. Um, but I also was going, and I was like, I don't want to just go to India without like trying to find some investment. So I actually did a yoga teacher training with the Super Soul Farm, Raghunath Yogi. He has a really nice podcast, Wisdom of the Sages. If you haven't ever checked that out or heard of it, it's especially good for new yogis wanting to know a little bit more about what they're practicing when they go to a yoga studio. So anyway, I decided I would do this yoga teacher training at this kind of westernized village that's in India that is a really good entrance point for anyone going to India for the first time. So I decided I would do that, but that would mean that we would have to be apart from each other for um, a month and a half. And we just only dating 2 months. And now I'm going to go a month and a half without seeing her, because I would go do the yoga teacher training. It costs quite costly to do it. And then on top of that, she was doing a yoga teacher training for 200 hours, and I just got into this 300-hour program to complete my 500 hours. So she had to finish that. So she had to wait to a certain time. So I had to go like a month and a half without her. And that was actually a really good test of our relationship. Because I was in India, and this, even where I was, it's actually a decent amount of temptation. Some of these young, beautiful yogi girls, and but I actually had some almost like a mystical experience in India that whenever I would do my meditations, um, I kept getting signs that you have to marry this girl. You have to marry her. And it wasn't the only signs. I'd gotten the request from my guru, it's proper. You marry a girl, you don't live with her, you don't live as man and wife if you're not married. And that's just not okay in the Western modern system. You can't just meet a girl and it's only been about 3 or 4 months at this point, and you can't just like marry her. Like, what will my parents say? What will her parents say? It would just be too much. But I kept getting this like sign to like, yeah, you should get married. And I won't go into detail, but I was in really deep meditation and I was looking at uh, images, or they're called deities of Krishna and Radha, his divine consort. And I felt like I kept getting lectured about why I had to marry her and stop, don't look at all these other potential temptations, and these, they're very nice girls, but it's not my business to be talking and making friendship with them. You should worry about your wife. I kept getting that message. And well, she wasn't my wife at the time, but you should worry about Ali. And so we were calling each other every night. India time and US time are like flipped, like 10 and a half hours apart. So mornings and nights were the only times we could talk, because otherwise we'd be each sleeping. And so we would contact each other. And I remember I was like, it's weird, I I had gotten off and in this meditation, and we only had one off day every 2 weeks. So on this off day, I went to the temple and I like meditated at the temple, and I got this lecture. But that night, actually, my guru actually called me and he said, "Oh, I was thinking we would hire a priest. We'd love to get you and Ali married in India." And I was like, "Gurumaj, I I can't ask her to marry me. Like, you know, like and a backstory, we talked about it, we joked about it with him before, that like, maybe if we go to India, maybe like, if we liked it, like we get married or something. We like had some kind of like joking exchange where we talked about marriage, but we didn't like take it very seriously. We like, well, our parents wouldn't be there. It would just be like a whole mess. We get married in India. But so he says that like that night, that he's just like, I just talked to a priest and he can come up and we can have it at the temple, and I can, I tell news reporters and we could promote the temple as well. It would be like wonderful. We'd be happy to get you married. I was like, not many people offer to throw you a wedding in your life. So I was like, well, now this is like new territory. A lot of people who went to our American wedding, which we had only like 6 months ago, might be like a little shocked to even hear this. But yeah, I mean, it's just what happened and it's part of the story, and it makes it actually, and we want to tell people anyway. It's kind of weird. Like sometimes it slips out and we're like, oh God, should we not have told that person? But it's just part of our how we met, and it's beautiful. It's actually a miracle. So we were offered to be thrown a wedding, and it was eating at my conscience that we're living together as like pretty much as husband and wife, but we didn't take any formal vow. So our relationship and is not blessed. It wasn't blessed. It was living in sin, as the Christian theology would have it. Yeah, that's popular among the older generation. I didn't really know much about that, but I've heard a lot of older generation tell me about, oh, you were living in sin or living in sin. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess it was like a popular thing. So anyway, it's kind of like the element of where we were at. And so I said, okay, I gotta call her. I'll run it by her, Gurumaj, but I don't know if she's gonna be ready for that. We were like crazy about each other, but it wasn't, we were still so new, and it's not very, well, interestingly enough, she just pops in right now and I'm telling.
Sure, she thought it started at 12.
Oh my gosh. I gotta like end this whole video now.
Just part 2. Till next
All
time.
right, this ends part 1 of the video.